C5 Insight is a Microsoft partner that plans, builds, and supports solutions in Dynamics 365, Teams, SharePoint, and the Power Platform. Contact us to modernize your business today. Hello, and welcome to Dynamics 365 Business Central and Customer Engagement CRM Integration. I'm going to turn things over to our presenters. They are both C5 Insight Senior Solution Architects. We have Emily Boiteau and Pablo Peralta. Guys, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you everyone for joining today. And Allison, thank you so much for that wonderful intro. As mentioned, Pablo and I are going to be talking through today, integrating Business Central and CRM, considerations to keep in mind. And we're actually going to be kind of splitting it between the two of us. So I'm going to be starting today going through, why you may be considering an integration between CRM and Business Central, some key considerations to keep in mind. I'll then be looking at some notable solutions that are in the market today, doing a bit of an infrastructure comparison, and then I'm going to be passing it over to Pablo for the second half of our conversation today, and he is going to be demoing a few of these solutions so you can get a feel for how some of these solutions could be used to meet your business requirements in an integration scenario. So where we are going to get started today is starting off with our initial considerations, starting with why would you consider an integration between BC and CRM, and considerations to keep in mind in this initial planning phase. So why integrate? You are likely familiar with some form of lead to invoice process within your own business. It may not follow this exact terminology or having all of the steps that are included here, but in your business, I suspect that there's some sort of inception point or lead or opportunity starting point in which you're going to quote them for potential business or for an order, and then eventually invoice that your customer. Typically, what we find is that the first half of this process starts in your CRM. So in this case, we're going to be focusing obviously on Dynamics 365. So your leads, opportunities, and quoting process likely will start in CRM. And there may be some overlap with quoting pending your business needs, but then typically what we see is that the second half of this process, more related to financials, order processing, and invoicing, those pieces are completed within your ERP, or in this case, our focus today on Business Central. And without an integration, these are two separate systems, yet they may have overlapping data. So without integrating them, they're each in their own silo, and you're not really you don't have any insight, for that matter, into relationships between, for example, how many leads are you qualifying to new customers, and then how many of those customers are effectively placing orders within your system. And on that note as well is that there's additional related data points that are not necessarily the exact process steps, but data points that are intricately involved in this overarching lead to invoice process. So I just mentioned customers as one example. Pricing and inventory are a couple other data points. So these may be living in CRM. You may have items in Business Central as well. And these are data points that you may actually want to integrate or consider integrating so that you can get this fulsome connected lead to invoice process within your systems. And so ultimately, with an integration between CRM and Business Central, you can consider setting up an integration of data similar to what's pictured here. And although it may not be, flowing in the exact kind of directional arrows that I have pictured, this is some common scenarios that we do see implemented. So just a sample, but the point here is that with an integration, you can consider integrating these key data points and within both CRM and Business Central, and managing those data points holistically, as opposed to a silo of customers in CRM and then orders and only in Business Central, rather than actually connecting those data points between the two systems. And so now that we've briefly touched on the why would we integrate, let's jump into the key considerations you should start thinking about when you're planning out how to actually implement an integration. So I like to group the key considerations into three broader categories. And so we have, as just covered, we have, why we want to integrate. And then now it's thinking through, okay, so how are we going to do that? What solution are we going to consider and use for our integration? And so these three broader categories are key areas that you should be considering and thinking through in the early stages of planning an integration project. And so our three solution considerations are: how flexible is the solution? What infrastructure is involved in the solution? And then finally, what investment are you going to have to make in the solution to have it be effective for your business? So we'll dive into each of these three categories in a bit more detail, starting with flexibility. So thinking through the flexibility of a potential solution. And really, this comes down to kind of three sub areas of consideration. First, you want to consider with any potential integration solution how flexible and adaptable it is to your business needs. So this would be evaluating items such as the tables and the columns that you want to integrate. How flexible is the solution in allowing for an integration of custom tables versus standard out-of-the-box tables? You may have specific business needs and requirements that you are incorporating into this integration, and you'll want to make sure that the solution fits those needs. The kind of second subcategory here within flexibility is flexibility around data management and data integrity. This would cover areas such as managing your system of record or your source of truth, so to speak. Does the potential integration solution that you're considering allow for bi-directional syncing? Does it only allow for one-way data flows between CRM to BC or vice versa? You may have specific requirements where Business Central is going to be your system of truth or source. And so you'll want to make sure that when you're thinking through a solution that it allows for that to happen and that data can flow between the systems as you need it. Additionally, under data management and integrity, this would also cover items such as how are you going to handle specific pricing scenarios or even specific inventory scenarios? Where exactly is that data going to be managed? And do the integration solutions allow for your specific requirements to be met? And then the other point within data management is around data transformations and making sure that you can map your data fields as expected. So is there enough flexibility in the integration solution to allow for that? And then the last point here under flexibility is around operational flexibility. So as a company, you may have specific requirements around security, for example. So if you're creating new records from Business Central to CRM, does the solution allow for you to set the owning user or the owning business unit to make sure that your security structure is maintained and follows your operational policies? Another consideration within operational flexibility is around data synchronization frequency. You may have requirements to sync data on a specified frequency. It may need to happen real time versus in batch. Does the solution allow for that to meet your operational needs? And another point around operational flexibility as well, particularly as it relates with Business Central and CRM, is connections between environments and multi-company setups. So in Business Central, you may have multiple companies. Does the solution allow for a connection to multiple Business Central companies to then integrate into your CRM environment? So you may have some operational needs that you'll want to ensure that the solution is flexible for. All right, now we're going to move into infrastructure. So the consideration around infrastructure. So in this area, when you are looking through or evaluating integration solutions, there are, again, kind of three subcategories underneath of infrastructure. The first one being system monitoring, error logs, debugging tools. Do the integration solutions allow for insight into why integration might be failing? What errors are coming up? Those are important things to keep in mind especially with complex integrations to help troubleshoot where errors might be appearing. Storage is another key consideration within infrastructure. Is the integration solution creating new intermediary tables to hold data? Or is it just pulling in like a read-only view of data? Do you need to consider your overall Dataverse storage capacity here and limits that you may have in your environment? So one thing certainly to keep in mind is storage limits and how the solution, the integration solution, will impact your storage. And then the last item here that's important to keep in mind is around API management. So depending on the solution you're choosing, and if there are data flows that are reliant on connections between Business Central and CRM, are there threshold limits that you should be aware of? Do you have like thousands of records that are going to be kicking off an integration flow, and does the solution API limits allow for that? Or will things time out and your integration won't actually run as expected? So weighing those kind of business requirements, your own data needs with this possible solution infrastructure is a key component to keep in mind as well. And then our final kind of overarching category of considerations to keep in mind is around overall investment. And so I like to break this down into two separate kind of subcategories. The first one being around the knowledge investment, which I think sometimes may be overlooked, especially for integration solutions. So depending on the solution that you are going to need for your integration, do you have people in-house that have the skill set to implement and maintain a solution like this? Or do you need to consider a third party or an implementation partner to actually develop and create an integration solution? The investment time into learning a new tool, maintaining it, troubleshooting error logs, all of that should absolutely be factored in when you are considering which integration solution you're going to proceed with. And then, on top of that is more of the software or budgetary investment, which, you may be a bit more familiar with, and I think is usually the kind of the first thing that people think about with an integration solution. Things such as what licenses might I need? Is this a completely new platform or that I'm going to need to have separate licensing for? What kind of fees are involved? Is there going to be a huge upfront fee to get us implemented, but then really low ongoing fees? And then considerations such as monthly licenses, ongoing maintenance, upgrading depending on the solution that you're selecting as well. So the software investment is another area to weigh against when you are, going through and thinking through what solution you're going to need for your integration. And so those are our key solution considerations from the business side and important items that you should be keeping in mind and using in your evaluation of integration solutions. And now we are going to jump into the to a bit of a comparison and overview of some of the perhaps more notable solutions in the market today. Um, Notably because I'm sure that if you have started thinking about a CRM and BC integration, you may have been overwhelmed with the varying solutions that are in play. I mean, even I can certainly relate to that. There is a wealth of knowledge out there, and oftentimes it might be hard to really pinpoint which solution will be right for me. And so using these solution considerations that we just covered with flexibility, infrastructure, and investment, you can really use those to compare with the solutions out there and identify which ones might be suitable for your business requirements. And so for a solution comparison today, I'm going to be reviewing at a high level the architecture of some of these key solutions. And I just want to call out right up front that this is certainly not an exhaustive list of literally every solution that's out there. These are just solutions that are perhaps more popular or particularly solutions that the C5 Insight team has specifically worked with as well. And as I go through this today, I just also want to highlight that we are not prescribing a specific solution. The solution that you choose will be completely dependent on your requirements and those key solution considerations. But we just want to give you that overview of these solutions so that you have a bit of a starting point to get you in the right direction if you are evaluating an integration. But the two that I'm going to focus on today are, and just looking at time, and I, want to make sure that Pablo has lots of time for his demo portion as well. But the two that I'm going to be focusing on today are the out-of-the-box solutions that Microsoft provides, and then a couple of third-party vendor connectors. We have some information around Azure Logic Apps and then Azure Data Factory, which are two other viable options to consider. And so we'll see if we can get to those today. If not, we do have the information available for download later. But all that to say, let's get started with a review of the Microsoft out-of-the-box solutions. So Microsoft has two components within their kind of out-of-the-box solutions. So at the top here, and actually let me use my little laser pointer. So at the top here, you'll see that there is the out-of-the-box Dataverse connector. And then on the bottom here, I have reference to virtual tables. And what we do find is that both of these components can be used, it's certainly in conjunction with one another when using the Microsoft, out of the box solution for an integration. So with the Dataverse connector, you can connect Business Central to integrate through Dataverse, and then integrate data between your Dynamics 365 environment and then your Business Central environment. And so through that setup process, you authenticate to your D365 environment. You begin to set up your data mappings between your tables and columns within Business Central. And then you'll be setting up your synchronization and or job queues to clearly identify how your data is going to be flowing between the two systems using the Dataverse connector. And so we do find, as mentioned, that the Dataverse connector is often used in conjunction with virtual tables. And so with the Dataverse connector, you may be setting yourself up to integrate customers, your out-of-the-box account or customers tables. And you may want to set it up so that Business Central might be your source of truth for customers. You can set up and configure which fields or which columns, I should say, are going to be mapped between Business Central and CRM. And then you set up your job queues to integrate that, to synchronize that information. Virtual tables may come into play for interaction with data from Business Central to CRM for information such as orders or invoices. So, as mentioned at the beginning of our conversation today, we often, orders and invoicing or anything related to your financials more frequently are actually taking place and being processed in Business Central. And you really may just need that information visible and available to you in CRM, and still connected to your customers. And so using the Dataverse connector to get that initial integration set up for tables like your customers, but then complementing that with virtual tables to just bring in that information from Business Central and then have it visible in your Dynamics environment is a great way to still integrate the information and have it available to you. The main difference between these two solutions, I should say, is just how the data is actually created and displayed. So the top Dataverse connector is effectively creating and updating records from Business Central, and then between Business Central and CRM, I should say, and it is actually creating new rows within your Dataverse environment or updating existing rows. So storage considerations, for example, is definitely something to keep in mind. But the point here is that you're actually creating and updating rows of data within your Dynamics 365 Dataverse environment. Virtual tables, on the other hand, is really displaying that information in D365, but it's not creating the tables or rows in D365. It's really the data exists only in Business Central, and it's more visible in CE. And you can still create views, I believe, using Fetch XML to still create some of those lists of records, but you aren't actually creating those as rows that you can then leverage in Dataverse. It's all still living in Business Central. So just wanted to highlight those as kind of key differences between the Dataverse connector and then virtual tables. But just now thinking through with the out-of-the-box solution, thinking through now our key considerations. So how does this Microsoft out-of-the-box solution fare when it comes to flexibility, infrastructure, and then investment? So in terms of flexibility, the out-of-the-box solution is becoming more and more moderate to higher in flexibility. Even when we were reviewing our notes, we found that even some items that we identified as limitations a year ago have now been updated in recent wave releases within Microsoft. So things such as the ability to connect to multiple Business Central companies in one Dataverse environment, that was just introduced, I believe, in the Wave 2 2023 release, so at the end of last calendar year. One of the other notable items that is important to keep in mind is differences in currency. So one thing that was a limitation was Business Central and CRM couldn't be connected if they had different base currencies. But an update that was made again in the last wave release was that is no longer a limitation. So it seems that Microsoft might be putting more perhaps more investment into making this out-of-the-box solution able to be more flexible to business needs, which is great. And I know Pablo is going to mention and show a little bit more in terms of setting up the field mappings and that sort of thing. But one point that I wanted to mention in terms of flexibility, which may make it slightly less flexible than some other solutions, is that if you do have custom tables, so not the standard out-of-the-box tables, but if there are some custom tables, there may be additional development required in Business Central in order to more, I guess, customize the integration to suit your needs. So definitely worth calling out and noting in terms of flexibility with the out-of-the-box solution. And then looking to infrastructure, the out-of-the-box solution leverages entirely existing infrastructure. It's really just a connector that you are using to connect BC between D365 sales. There aren't any additional platforms or tools in use when you're using the out-of-the-box solution. But a couple of our other key items to keep in mind with infrastructure is around storage, which I alluded to when we were chatting through virtual tables and versus the Dataverse connector. So if you are not using virtual tables, definitely consider storage and how your storage usage may increase if you're creating a lot of records from BC into CRM and vice versa. And then into investment, the out-of-the-box solution honestly is quite relatively low cost, primarily because it is a standard connector that there is no additional cost. You may have just some fees when it comes to development and the initial implementation, which truthfully would apply regardless of which kind of solution you're going with. But because it's a relatively user-friendly configuration process as well, this would be considered a bit more of a lower cost solution if it did meet your business needs. The one point I did just want to make is additional costs for logic apps if needed. So we do sometimes find that complementary logic apps for perhaps notifications or additional integration scenarios may be needed with the Microsoft out-of-the-box solution. So there may be some minimal costs there to run those flows within logic apps as needed. So I am very conscious of time, and we only have about 30 minutes left, but before I pass it over to Pablo, I will cover the third-party connectors architecture. He will certainly go through that in more detail as well, though. But there are two kind of third-party connectors that we just wanted to highlight today. One of them is Kingsway Soft, and then which I'll focus on right now. And so Kingsway Soft, you'll see that the architecture of using Kingsway Soft is noticeably different compared to the out-of-the-box solution in that it uses Azure SQL Server Integration Services, or SSIS, as the primary integration platform to connect Business Central and Dynamics CRM data. So when you do have Kingsway Soft license, you will use Kingsway Soft connection manager tools to connect with your BC platform and your D365 platform. But when you are building out your data transformation and integration processes, you are going to be using SSIS for that, and you can develop and very likely you'll be using tools like Visual Studio to actually map out those processes and visualize what those processes are going to look like. And so I am actually just going to jump into our kind of comparison because, Pablo, I feel really bad. I don't want to run out of time for your demo because it is quite important to see that.
You're doing great.
Yeah. So briefly what I'll mention is, so we have Kingsway Soft, and as mentioned, the notable difference there is that the kind of middle platform that you're using to develop your integration processes is SSIS. The other third-party platform that I did just want to highlight briefly is this tool called Smart Connect by E1 Solutions. And so Smart Connect is another offering on the market. It has its own, it is its own integration platform that facilitates data integration and automation between BC and CRM. So it has its own platform that you would be using to actually map out your field column mapping, the tables. And so it's not using a platform like SSIS or anything like that. And so one thing that I do just want to point before I pass it over to Pablo for the demo is our considerations within within these third-party connectors. So the two kind of vendors that we called out today with starting with Kingsway Soft, just want to mention it is a incredibly highly flexible platform. You basically you do have full control when building out your integration processes and logic, and it's capable of advanced transformations such as creating option sets, upserting in processes, and so it is really an enterprise-ready solution that it is quite flexible to business needs. It does use some advanced infrastructure, the SSIS platform in particular. And then overall, the investment for this tool is probably more on the maybe more moderate, low to moderate, depending on how you're running SSIS, whether it's on-prem or on the cloud. But it is a very user-friendly configuration tool in terms of mapping. And the there is a license required for Kingsway Soft and an ongoing subscription for running SSIS. The kind of what makes it a bit more perhaps moderate investment is the knowledge perhaps required for modeling out your processes. And there also may be additional development required on the Business Central side to give you the data and expose the data that you'll need when modeling your processes. So the Kingsway Soft is, I would probably say maybe a bit more on the moderate side of that scale. And then just to touch on Smart Connect E1, it is a moderately flexible solution. Within its platform itself, although you do have the ability to map out your integration processes, there are scenarios where if you have more complex transformations, you may need additional coding experience like JavaScript. To specify that in a bit more detail, which makes it slightly less flexible, but still, you still have the ability to map out your processes as needed. The infrastructure itself, as mentioned, it's its own platform. One thing to note when it comes to infrastructure is that depending on the license tier that you get, so I'm kind of putting investment and infrastructure together, but depending on the license tier that you get, you may be limited in the connections that you have available to you. So meaning connections between environments. So that is one thing to certainly keep in mind is if you have a dev, a sandbox, a prod environment, you may need to consider additional licensing tiers within Smart Connect to effectively connect to your connection points. And then just before finishing off, there's TIBCO is another third-party vendor that you may have heard of or be familiar with, and that one is another great solution to look into. And then, of course, there may be other custom solutions out there that, such as using Power Automate and additional logic like that. So the important takeaway on this kind of idea of third-party connectors is just to always keep, our three key considerations in mind, but you'll have to review those and factor those in with the vendor specifically to make sure that this tool will actually meet your needs for your integration. So as mentioned, in our slides, we do have reference to Azure Logic apps, and then Azure Data Factory as another couple of options for consideration. We will not get to those in more detail right now, but please do reach out. And I know Allison will get to this, but please do reach out if you do want a copy of these slides with the information. But ultimately, I know we have a lot to show you in terms of demonstrating some of these solutions in more detail, just so you can get a sense of that. So I'm actually now going to throw it over to Pablo for that portion of our webinar for today.
Struggling to leverage Microsoft Enterprise solutions? At C5 Insight, we understand the intersection between technology, business, and people. Contact us to learn more.
Wonderful. Great intro. Emily, let me show my screen. Let me know when you can see it.
Looks good.
Okay, awesome. And first off, for all of you who are attending this webinar, if you have any questions, please feel welcome to post them. I don't know, I would think there is some chat or something here. or reach out to us. Maybe we can write our email addresses here. And yes, we have a lot to show you on how some of these pieces work together. If you are seeing my screen now, you will see CRM or CE with these account records. And you may recognize that some of these account records have an account number here, are attached to a company, okay? And they were modified or created by a user that it says BCI Cronus. This is because they were created through the out-of-the-box integration. I will show you how that was accomplished, and pretty much the same with these contact records here. So they were also coming from the out-of-the-box integration between Business Central and CE, all of these contacts that you see here. So those are actually records that have been synchronized between both systems thanks to the out-of-the-box solution. But I also have a couple of more type of records, and Emily referred to that in her presentation. These are actually virtual tables. These sales orders that you see here, these records that you see here, they don't live in CE, but they are in BC, and we are reading them through the virtual tables solution technology in CE. Actually, if I click any of this stuff, you will see that there is no form actually, unless we model one. And the same here for sales invoices. This is what you get the first time that you access one of these virtual entities. But of course, you can come here and add more columns. And all of these columns that you see here, those columns are actually coming from BC, and the data is not in CE, but in BC, okay? So how that could be accomplished? From one side, on the CRM side, you will see a few solutions that are installed. Some of them are pretty much self-clarifying by its own name. For instance, this one, Business Central Dataverse Integration, that is like the core integration solution between both systems, and it has the security roles and one per each table that we are synchronizing, and it adds all the fields that are necessary. But you will see other solutions as well, supporting solutions that add other concepts like the company concept, so to represent the same as in BC. And for instance, you also have this other virtual table solution, and through that one, you will see the different tables that are available through virtual tables, okay? And you may recognize sales orders and sales invoice that I added them to my custom app that I have here. I added them to the sitemap because out of the box, they are not added, okay? So that is from the CE side, okay? You will have these solutions talking about the out-of-the-box connection, okay? What happens on the BC side, okay? If we go to the BC side, something that you will start from when you want to set up the integration between BC and CE are the assisted setups, okay? You will find a couple of assisted setups to run. One of them is the setup connection to Dataverse, and the other one is the setup connection to Dynamics 365 Sales. Actually, if I click on any of them here, I will get an error because, or not an error, but what BC is telling me is, okay, you already ran this stuff. Are you sure you want to run it again? I'm not going to run it again. I will show you how it looks once configured. But to give you a glimpse of the steps, those are not big deal. I mean, I'm looking at the icon here. If you see here the presentation, you click on set up the connection to Dataverse. So you click enable it, you enable the virtual table solutions and events, so things are tied together. Then you need to specify how you want the security model to work. You have two flavors. One of them is using users representing those salespeople in BC, users in CE, or based on teams. The suggestion is based on teams, so it creates a team per each company and assigns a security role to the team. So any user inherits those security roles to access that data. And then you need to specify how you want to couple records between both systems. For instance, you will want to couple contacts by email address or things like that. Or you may, and with customers, you will want to map them or couple them by account number or things like that. So you specify that criteria. You can see here, I have specified that criteria for customer number, mapping to the account number field in the account records. And it also points you to the installation of the virtual table solution. This is an app that you install in your CE, and it installs those managed solutions necessary. And curiously, as far as you enable different virtual tables, that's Microsoft stuff. We cannot modify a managed solution, but they can do behind the scenes. So they add the other tables and the stuff needed to make it work. Okay, and the end result is this one. You get to this page, and this is what I'm going to open right now in BC, that Dataverse connection setup. Okay, so now if I close this stuff here, oh, I wanted to close that. Okay, and you go to Dataverse connection setup. This is what you get. So you see that this company is being integrated with this environment, and the data sync is enabled. Actually, from here, you can test the connection, and it will quickly test that everything is working as expected. Okay, so, okay, it says it's valid, and it gives you some other data. And the fun comes here in the integration tab. So in the integration tab, you can see all the integration table mappings, how that is working. And you see all the tables that are being synchronized with CE, okay? And we can get to any of them. For instance, if we get to customer and want to see how fields are being mapped, okay, you can click here and you will see how fields are being mapped, and you can also edit how that mapping is being done, and if you want it to be bi-directional or only in one direction, if you want to set a constant value or some basic transformation rules. So you have some flexibility here, but if you note here, okay, and this is something, I mean, I come from the CE space. I'm not a BC guy, or at least not until doing so many integrations.
Give yourself more credit, Pablo. You're a BC guy now, maybe.
Thank you. Yeah. We became very, very good friends with BC and with NAV too, because we are also doing integrations with NAV, and I started to like it actually. But something that I got crazy here is that I don't have any new button. So how can I add another and map another field? Or if I get back to here, okay, how can I add another table to query, to map between both systems? And the good news is that is possible. Okay, you can do that. The bad news is that you need to have AL coding skills in order to make that stuff visible here, so you can map other tables and other fields between both systems. So that is part of the considerations that Emily was pointing you to. Keep that in mind, that this is a easy solution to configure if you have very elementary out-of-the-box requirements. But as far as you need more flexibility, and as far as you need some include custom fields, custom tables, I mean, keep in mind that you will need to write AL code. Okay. The other stuff here is how things are coupled together. Okay, so if I click here on this table and go navigate to the configure the coupling configuration, you see that those are being coupled by account number. So now if I and behind the scenes you can have the jobs, you can set up the jobs to do that stuff, but we are going to do it manually now here. Let's say, for instance, I want to Alpine Sky House. I'm going to make any modification here. Webinar. I will include that word, and maybe I will create a new customer here. So a new company. This is going to be my new webinar company. Okay, so we have a couple of more records here. And if we get to that Dataverse, Dataverse connection setup, I go to the integration table mappings, right where it was before. Okay, and I'm going to couple new records. So I'm going to click on match-based coupling. Okay, and you see this stuff here, synchronized after coupling. So once that I click OK here, this is going to run the synchronization job. Okay, and if all works as expected, in a few seconds, we should see this completed. So I'm going to get back to here. I'm going to open it again. Okay, so it inserted one record in CE, and it should have modified one, but let's see how it worked. Let's see it here. Okay, so yeah, I have my new webinar company here coming from BC, and I have this other company name that was updated with the webinar tag. Okay. The other stuff that you will see here are the access to virtual tables. So if I get back to here, okay, and you have the virtual table stuff, and from here you can get to the app source app. Okay, but we have already installed that app, so I'm not going to run it again. But from here you can see the available virtual tables. Okay, so this is going to open all the stuff that you can have in CE as virtual tables pointing to BC. You see here that I have sales invoice, sales order, those tables that I showed to you. But if you want to make it available, we have item as well. But if you want to make available employee or whatever other table, you just need to enable them here. Sorry, you need to click any of them. Okay, you have to click enable, and this behind the scenes is going to modify the managed solution, and it's going to make it available, that virtual table, for you, so you can add it to the sitemap or use it within the system. Of course, with the limitations that virtual tables have, like security. Okay, they are only owned by the organization, so you don't have security by user security, and you see that all the The columns that you see are just simple data types. If you see here, they are not currency types. They are like decimals and all that stuff. So those are some of the reasons I don't like or tend not to use too much virtual tables, because they have as far as you start working with them, you realize all the limitations that they have, but they are a decent solution if you want to display BC data in the context of CE. Okay. Are we good with that? How we are doing with the time?
We only have 7 minutes left.
Oof.
There's just so much amazing, so many things to share when it comes to integration.
Yeah.
We could talk about it for hours.
Yeah, some other quick stuff here. Let's say let's try to pick any customer here that we have. Okay, some other cool stuff from the out-of-the-box solution, and then we will quickly jump to Logic Apps and Kingsway Soft. Okay, but maybe from here I can go to orders and I create one order. Okay. So you can see that you can have orders integrated between CE and BC right out of the box. So this is my order webinar. I'm sorry, I'm not being so innovative today, so creative with the names. Okay, so let's put some other data here, very quick. Okay, just to create an order from here and add 1 or 2 products. Okay, these products are coming from BC as well, thanks to that integration. Okay, so we have an order in CE, and you will see that there is a custom button here that says submit order. This is actually an action that is part of the solution that submits this order to BC. So now if we go to BC, okay, we still won't see it if I go to orders. Okay, but unless of course you schedule those jobs, but as I don't have anything scheduled here, I can come here to synchronize option, sales order list, and I will see that that order is in CE pending to get into BC, so I can create this in Business Central, and this is going to tie those records together, and you will have now that order in BC. Okay. Well, I don't know, I have some rule with shipment date, but you see all the stuff here. Okay. Now, that is one of the integration approaches. So we cover the out-of-the-box solution. Emily also talked about some logic apps. Okay, logic apps is for those of you who are familiar with Power Automate. It's like the Power Automate for the backend, or for more pro developers, or things that are not so end user stuff, but mostly background processes that you would like to set up. So I have here, this works on top of Azure. Okay, so what I've got here is a very basic logic app, but so you can realize how powerful this is, where I have one trigger, okay, set up, that is whenever a new account is added and that account doesn't have an account number, so it means it was created in CE, but it's not synchronized with BC yet. Okay, and with that, what I'm doing here in the second step, in this step, I'm creating that account, that customer I'm creating that one in BC, mapping that information. And after it's being created, I'm updating the account record in CE so it has the customer number from BC. Okay, so now if I go to CE, okay, and let's pretend we have one of our leads here. Let's pick any of the leads. And if you qualify any of these leads, the account record is going to be created with the data from this lead. Okay, so I'm going to qualify that. Okay, I'm going to ignore and save the dupe detection rules. So we may have a company lead work Inc. sample created. Let me switch now to logic apps. Let me refresh here. You see that the logic app is running. Hopefully it gets too successful. Yeah. So this happened in real time, and this is part of the benefits of using logic apps. I wouldn't use it to massively move records like an initial sync from BC to CE. That type of things I would leave that for or either the out of the box solution or more robust stuff like Kingsway Soft. But for some real-time communication between both systems, I would use something like Logic Apps. And now if we go to BC and see customers here, we should see that we have Leadware Inc. here, okay? And it's 60040, okay, with all the data, okay? That is a second approach to the integration. Let's move quickly now to the third approach, that is regarding Kingsway Soft. Kingsway Soft is a third-party solution. This is more, you will like it most if you are like want to have full control over the data flow and over transformations. And if you are familiar with SQL or maybe you work in the past with the SQL Server Integration Services infrastructure, you will love it. And you have a lot of flexibility, control over what happens in each moment. And you have all the power of SQL Server Integration Services and all the power of Visual Studio to touch the data, to debug whatever issue that you have during synchronization. So it's extremely powerful, but it requires some technical skills. So if you don't have some skills, or you are more on a very simple integration between both systems, maybe you would prefer another tool like Emily was pointing out, like E1 Smart Connect. But if you are one of those that want to have full control over what's going on, Kingsway Soft, it's great. And here you will find, for instance, the connection managers. With Kingsway Soft, you have like the two plugs, okay? With the one of the systems, in this case, is Business Central. This is using an app registration in Azure Active Directory, or what's called now Entra ID. And you can see this is pointing to Kronos 2. I'm pointing to that organization, to that company, sorry, in BC. So we are not touching anything that is encompassed by the out-of-the-box integration. So if I switch here to Kronos 2 company, okay, in Business Central, you will see that is a copy from the original Kronos one. You will see the original customers, but not the latest ones that we have created. And if you see, for instance, here, Dataverse connection setup, okay, you will see that there is no configuration, there is nothing that is tied to Dynamics CRM, Dynamics CE, okay? And I'm pointing this plug to this connector to that company, okay? You can test those connections, okay? And here I have the other connection that is with CRM, with CE, okay? And I have a process here, or a package, whatever you prefer to call it. First off, I have one here that just lists the companies. And you see this magnifier here, and I love that stuff, because whenever you execute a package, it's like a breakpoint that you have, and you can see what data is coming in from the previous steps, okay? So here I see the list of companies from BC with all the data. That's a very, very simple package. But I have other package here that basically reads the customers in BC, okay? And you can specify which columns you want. This is using that connector with the REST API. It can use the SOAP API. It can use the OData API, and you can also use it to connect to NAV on premises, okay? And then just to show you, okay, a very minimal transformation. I'm taking the name from the company, and I'm attaching the Cronus2 tag, this text, so you know that is coming from that company in BC. Something that Emily was pointing out was this ability with Kingsway Soft to map option sets, to map options between any system with option sets. And you see that here I have a custom field. I added a couple of custom fields to the account entity, and one of those fields is the tax area code. And I have a mapping from BC. If you see here in BC, if I open any of these customers, okay, you see that you have some area codes, okay? So what I'm telling is that, okay, this value, if you have this value in CRM, in CE, map it to this one, okay? And if you see my here, my custom solution, sorry, I have set up that field. This is an option set, okay? But if you see the options for that option set, you see that I only added one option. I didn't add the other options, but we'll let Kingsway Soft to create any option that may be missing. So that will really so helpful in integrations, because you don't need to do all of those mappings or have failures because of options missing in your option set, okay? And then I have a final step here to do the actual abstract of account in CE. And this is extremely powerful because you have this abstract ability here. So you don't have to take care of if it's a creation or if it's an update. It can resolve that for you in real time. So you have an abstract here. I'm manually specifying the criteria, but you can use any alternative key that you have in CE. You can use the primary key, whatever stuff, to realize if it's an update or not an abstract. And you have plenty of options here, some of them related to ignore and change fields. So this is going to make it extremely fast, your integration, because if nothing changed on that record, there will be no updates, and it will be just moving to the next one. Something very useful as well is that you can execute a workflow action. So sometimes we ended up doing some workflow action in CE that needs to be run after updating or creating the record, and you have plenty of options here. We know that I know that we run out of time, so really I don't want to spend more on that. And here are all the different mappings, and among those mappings you can map also some lookups. So I'm mapping a lookup with the company entity, and you can say how you want to map those lookups. Okay. So with that, I'm going to quickly run that. And again, I'm going to put here a data viewer. So we can have that little breakpoint to see the data. Okay. That's something that, for instance, you will miss in tools like E1 Smart Connect. I don't know in others, but you can touch the data. And that's something sometimes it's a little frustrating when you are troubleshooting some issues, but you have that here. So this is doing the mappings. This is creating now the options in the option set. Those 6 records are flowing from BC to CE, and you can see all the log in progress, what's going on. You have full details as well. Okay, this is taking a little time because it's creating the options in the option set. But after that, we should see in a few seconds those records in CE. Okay, so here you have that data viewer. This is the data that is coming from. Okay, and as you can see here, this is the name that I'm attaching the Cronus to. So I'm going to close this. This is going to create those records in CE. And one more second. We are almost there. Okay, so it finished. So now if I move to CE here and I click on accounts, I see all of those accounts that just were created by the integration user that I have set up, by the app user, and you see the text area code was properly mapped and the options were created in the option set. Okay. So with that, I would like to show you more stuff, but I know we ran out of time, so want to be very conscious with that. And okay, if any questions or whatever.
That's awesome.
More
Thanks,
than
Pablo.
glad.
Yes, thanks so much, Pablo. I know that there's so much great information to cover here. How dare we try and jam it into one solid hour? So here's a little bit of information about exactly what it is that we do. As far as the implementation of of Dynamics 365, Microsoft 365, and Power Platform, but more so, we're completely interested in your specific use case of any and all of these platforms, making sure that you are creating contagiously engaged employees that can truly help transform your customer and clients experience. So if you'd like copies of the slides from today or have any follow-up questions having viewed this, easiest way to get in touch with us, c5insight.com. We've got all of our listings of events under resources, and there's a contact us form that'll put you straight in our inboxes that we can follow up with you, address any questions, get you copies of the slides, and anything else that you might need from us. So thank you so much again to Emily and Pablo. Thank you for attending or watching this back later. And we hope to see and hear from you soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.